Good morning, my friends. Welcome to Lord's Day Live. And welcome to Mother's Day. Yeah, it's a big deal. I love my mom and planning to rush over there after church today and spend some time with her. I hope you get to spend some time with your mother. If your mother is no longer with you, take some time today to reflect on what she has meant to your life and seek out another woman in the world that could use that validation. I've got many women in my life, actually, who've been very motherly to me, who did not give me birth. Several of those women never had children of their own, but they most definitely need to be celebrated on Mother's Day. Oh, what the world would look like if we didn't have the women of the world. Oh, I don't even want to go there. But anyhow, let's remember to celebrate our moms, and we will, in that process, be hugely blessed. Okay, this says its live streaming has been automatically lowered because of something. But anyhow, it says that I'm still going, so we're going to keep on trucking. And if you don't see me out there, let me know. And that way I can make sure that I see you. Okay, I think I got everything set there. All right, Lord's Day Live. In the sermon time, we'll deal with mothers, and so stick around for that. And a rather unique twist on it. I'm actually going to talk about three men with regards to mothers. And so, yeah, what in the world's that all about? Anyhow, stick around. I think that you'll appreciate that particular lesson, and that comes after the Sunday school class. But right now, we need to do Lord's Day Live with regards to Bible class time. And you'll notice that I've already got part of it up here on the part of our timeline up here. Go ahead and get your papers out because we're gonna be drawing some things today with regards to doodling. But we need to put some things on our timeline as well as our map. And so get your papers and pencils out and be ready to take advantage of what we got going today. Now you might recall that we've been working our way through decision making. May is also celebrated for graduations. And the fact that we got a lot of folks who are graduating is very important for us to, I think, discover, think through, ask the Lord, what's the best way for me to make decisions? Because some of these, I believe that the age between 18 and 25 is some of the most difficult, tumultuous periods of the entire lifetime. And anyhow, I won't get back on that. I preached that sermon before, but because we're making such huge decisions during that time, our career often is established during those years. Choosing a spouse, often established between 18 and 25. Even having your first or second child often happens between 18 and 25. A lot of massive decisions that are made in this time period between high school graduation and hitting your mid-20s. So anyhow, making decisions. How do we do that? Anyhow, you might recall that we've talked so far about the acronym DATE. D-A-T-E. D-A-T-E. Date. And I've suggested to you so far that if we're going to make proper decisions, the first thing that you have to do is you have to deny yourself. And you might recall that we drew that little thing in order to doodleize it in our mind. Is doodleize even a word? Well, it is now, because I just made it up. Doodleize this so that you remember it. And we put sticks, remember, at the top of that. And then I did a really pitiful job of trying to draw a flame. That's supposed to be a flame. That's horrible. But anyhow, that's supposed to be the sacrificial altar. And let's see, we talked about Romans 12, 1 and 2. And that tells us that we need to be a living sacrifice. So the first thing that you have to do in making any decision with regards to God, life, and that kind of a thing is to deny yourself. In fact, I'll go so far as to say pretty much any decision. We have lived under about, I don't know, at least a century, I would say, of this secular psychology that would suggest to you that if you've got issues, you got problems, you're discouraged, you're depressed, it's because you're not dealing enough with taking care of yourself, that you're not spending enough time seeking self-help. And although I think there can be some truth to that, the scriptures are plain that the best way for you to build yourself up is to build somebody else up. That's the life of Jesus. The best way for you to get out of discouragement, depression, those kind of things is start serving. Be an individual who gets after the world, and there's always somebody out there who's worse off than you are. And so deny yourself and get after the mission of God. Romans 12, 1 and 2, when you came to Christ, you were called to be a living sacrifice. And in the process of accepting your salvation, you accepted this assignment. And so from this point on, you've got to be a person who's willing to say, it's not really what I wanted to do, but that's what God wants me to do. That's what I'm going to do. So the first thing that you have to do in making a decision is you've got to deny your own desires so that God's desires can come first. Now, oftentimes, especially if you pray that prayer that I have told you about repeatedly, God, help me to want what you want me to want. If you'll pray that repeatedly and really sincerely mean it, God will develop within you a heart that even when you're in the midst of denial, it will be a moment of satisfaction and validation because I want to be a servant of God anyhow. Anyhow, we've preached that before, right? And you're saying, move along, Sonny. So we will. The D is for deny. The A is for advice. We need to seek advice. If you'll notice the passage that's in front of you here, this is the little passage that I gave in the introduction several weeks ago. But it talks about this whole idea of seeking counsel, seeking advice for other individuals. Now let me just say before we get into this, there's a little three-part, there's a combination of two words in three parts here. I'll explain it in a second. But with regards to advice, remember the illustration I gave you several weeks ago. Make sure that you seek advice from individuals who have proven themselves to be worthy of giving advice. One of the things that really discourages me is individuals are passing out all kinds of advice about whatever it may be, and yet they have no background in that area. They've not proven themselves to be worthy of passing out advice. That's why elders are required by the Lord to be individuals who have proven themselves within their own family. If you've raised your family well, then you might be worthy of actually serving, leading the Lord's church, the Lord's family. But you got to prove yourself well there first. And so seek advice from individuals who have proven themselves to be worthy of giving that advice. One of my pet peeves is, we'll have these political talk shows going on, and they will ask a Hollywood star to come in and tell us about politics. Or they'll ask a professional athlete to come in and lecture us on politics. It's not their area. Why do we believe that just because somebody makes a lot of money acting or somebody makes a lot of money throwing a football, that somehow they also are brilliant in the realm of economics or the political realm or raising a family for that matter? If you want to make a good decision, seek advice from those who have proven themselves to be worthy of even giving you advice. That's Bible. And by the way, it's also common sense. For our little, what do you call that? Little doodleization to help us to remember. What about? We need, put that as your doodle. That'll help you remember the A in advice. What about this? What about that? Individuals who give you a variety of options and opportunities to see it from a different angle, that's good. We need that in life. Years ago, one of my favorite basketball teams, I remember watching it, it had an amazing coach. It was the Chicago Bulls. And Michael Jordan, arguably the best basketball player ever to play, was one of the players. His coach would often do something remarkable. He had sitting on his bench arguably the 5 best basketball players in the NBA. And they would be sitting, and timeout would be called, they'd come rushing off the court, they'd sit on the bench, and before he ever went to those 5, he would pull back onto the court, and he would bring his other coaches, his assistant coaches close by, and they would shoot ideas at him rapidly. Here's some thoughts, what do you think? And he'd take just a few seconds to hear all of these ideas that came to him. Then he would make a decision, and he would go to the bench, and he would pass out to the 5 superstars. Here's what I think we should do. He sought advice. That's so huge. It makes so much sense. Seek options. Seek advice from individuals, especially those who have proven themselves to be worthy of giving you that advice. You're going to get tired of hearing me say this today, but it's so very, very important. So seek advice, and in that process, you can move into step number 2. First of all, you said, I'll take whatever you want, God. Whatever you say, I'm willing to do that. If you can't say that, don't go further. But now number 2, you're saying, okay, I'm going to seek out the advice of godly people. Wonder what they think on this subject. Now let's go back to the wisest man in history outside of Jesus, Solomon. Proverbs chapter 15 and verse 22. The wise man Solomon, as he writes these words, and by the way, the poetic approach back in the day seemed to emphasize this idea. they would say it one way and then they would reverse it and say it another way, or they would say it one way, then they would say the opposite. That was kind of poetry back in the day. It wasn't so much rhyming, which, by the way, as far as I'm concerned, if it doesn't rhyme, it ain't a poem. But anyhow, that's just Sonny Childs. But back in the day, they would say things that were kind of in comparison. And so it would either be two extremes, or it would be saying it one way and then saying it another way. Well, in this particular case, we're going to see three pairs of opposites. Three pairs of opposites in this passage. It's just a little passage, but it's so important, this idea of seeking advice. Your first pair has been underlined already. Notice what it says. Plans fail for lack of counsel, but with many advisors they succeed. So the first pair, if you want to call it that, yeah, I guess I can do it over because I'm going to draw your map over there. The first pair is this idea of fail and succeed. That's your first pair of opposites, if you will. Okay? Now, before I go any further, because I've gotten myself all out of order, I forgot I was supposed to go back to the timeline. Before you ever get into Proverbs, you're supposed to know where does it fit on the timeline, right? All right, rapidly. Come back over here, guys. Okay, you divide this one in half, what do you get? Noah's Ark, that's exactly right. You divide this one in half, what do you get? The Kings, that's exactly right. Go about 100 years into here, what do you get? The Bible is complete. Boy, you guys are sharp. Okay, so there you go. Now, you come over here, you divide this one in half, and of course you're going to get the Ten Commandments. That's not going to really play into our lesson today, so it doesn't really matter for us to have it on there, but I'm going to anyhow. And then you've got silence, because I just don't want you guys to forget all of this. What I wanted you to see is I wanted you to see this period right here. Remember what this period is about. This was the period of the kings, the period of the kingdoms. If you were to, and I gave you other things back in the day when we were talking about this, but if you were going to list me the first four kings of Israel, what would they be? All right, we don't have time, so I'm just going to do it. Saul was the first one. Who's the next one? That's right, David. That's why we got the Star of David up there. He's really where we start as far as our understanding of the kingdom. He's not the first king, but he was arguably the best king. Saul, David, who's next? Solomon. Okay, and then, and I don't even know how to spell this guy. We're just going to call him Rehoboam. Rehoboam. He's the son of Solomon. He's the guy who makes the unwise decision of listening to his peers rather than listening to the older folks. See, he sought advice, but he didn't seek advice from those who have proven themselves. And by the way, for you and a lot of folks watching this are going to be young people, so remember this. You are foolish if you are going to rise or allow the advice of a friend, a fellow peer, to rise above the level of the advice of somebody who has been there, done that, and survived it, parents, older individuals. That's just foolish to put those two on equal grounds. Individuals who've been there, already proven that they can survive that, they're the ones you need to elevate as far as advice is concerned. So, you've got these kings, all right? Well, here's where we're going, all right? Right here, Solomon, all right? That's the dude who wrote this particular passage, Solomon, okay? All right, now, let's go over here to and I'm not going to do the whole map. We're not going to do the boot ball, banana boat, with bubbles being bounced beside balloon. We're not going to do the whole thing. We're just going to get right down to, well, basically, we're going to get down to the boat. All right, here's the edge of the Mediterranean, okay? See, that's water. Big, that's the Med, okay? And then you got Sea Galilee, Jordan River, Dead Sea. Remember that? Down here, way down here, you've got the Sinai Peninsula, etc. We're not going to really deal with that too much either. Way over here, remember, you got the Persian Gulf, okay? Jerusalem. How do you find Jerusalem? Go to the top of the Dead Sea and slightly to the west and put you a big old dot there. That's Jerusalem. Jerusalem. Okay? And by the way, that is where Solomon is going to reign. Okay? So now you've not only put him on the timeline, you've also put him on the biblical map, where we're going to get the book of Proverbs. Now is when I'm supposed to give you my first point, okay? And oh my, I've only got 5 minutes left. All right, so number one, the first thing he says with regards to these combination of words that are opposites, he says, look, if you have plans that you're trying to make, and that, of course, is exactly what we're trying to do, right, in this class. If you got plans that you're going to make, they're going to fail, that's the first option, or they're going to succeed based upon what he's going to tell you. So you see the two polarizations here, the two ideas. You got failure and you got success. As you look at folks in life, especially those from whom you're planning to seek advice, ask yourselves, are they failures or are they succeeding? Doing marital counseling with a woman years ago, and every time it seemed like we were making progress, she'd come back a week later and we had to undo and redo everything that we talked about. And I finally discovered that what was happening is we came together for marital counseling, and we were reading the Bible. We were talking about folks who actually had relationships that were working and that kind of a thing. And in the interim, after she got done with my little time with her, our little Bible study, she'd go back and she would re-engage a best friend who had been divorced 3 times, as I recall. I think she was actually living with a guy, number 4. I think that was something like that. But she'd been divorced multiple times. And that woman, who had proven that she didn't even understand how to make a relationship work, and I recognize that divorce doesn't always happen just because of one side, but when you've been through 3 of these kind of things, you got to ask yourself, what in the world? And she was taking the advice of this woman who, at the very least, I could say, struggled with having good relationships after 3 divorces. She was taking that advice, and she was using that advice to trump or overcome the biblical advice that she and... Why would you do that? You got 2 options. Look at life and see the folks who have failed, see the folks who have succeeded. If they failed in that area of their life, for Pete's sake, don't follow them down the path of failure. Follow those who have succeeded. Number 2. Oh, and that's where I got to do the thingy-to-but-ingy. Notice 2 other words we've got here. Number 2, he's going to contrast the idea of lack, oh, that's his lock, lack of, and many. This is also very important that we see. Number 1, fail or succeed, polarization. Number 2, there can be lack of information and many advisors. And you see how this is coming right down. Failure is going to come about because of a lack of information. Success is going to come about because of the abundance of information. So you're trying to make a good decision. Well, ask a bunch of folks who are going to say, but what about this option? What about that option? Especially if these folks that you're asking are folks who have already proven themselves not to be a failure, but rather to be a success. You're going to find yourself, in most instances, you're going to find yourselves coming out with at least a poor decision being made, the less information you have to put into that decision. Sometimes you just you just happen into it. But most of the time, unless you got a lot of information, you're going to struggle with making a good decision. And so get as many advisors as is possible according to the text. Number 3 then, oh, that's when I got to show you this. See, number 3. And then he's going to say, he's going to contrast these. You've got lack of counsel versus, I should put a verses there instead of the pluses, but yeah, let's do that because that's kind of confusing, isn't it? We'll put verses, kind of like it's a wrestling match here. Advisors. Okay. So the third thing that you have to do here is recognize there is counsel and there are advisors. These really aren't opposites as much as he's saying that in the first 2, when you arrive at the level of accepting counsel or advice, your journey to that point is going to dictate whether or not you get good stuff with regards to counsel or advice. So as you go back and you review then, he's going to say, look, you're going to fail if you have a lack of counsel, but you're going to succeed if you have many advisors. See how that works? And so in our second point with regards to making good decisions, as you seek advice from individuals, make sure that you look at their life and ask yourself, have they failed or been a success? Well, if they have failed, then you probably want to avoid that information. But if they have succeeded, then for Pete's sake, get out your notebook and start taking notes. I remember when Cindy and I were younger, and the boys were coming on, and this was before Bryson was ever born. And I remember her spending many, many hours with various women talking about, what do you do in this situation? Or what about that situation? Now, these are godly women who have already raised their home, their family, and raised oftentimes boys, because we knew we were going to have a boy. And so she wanted that information. I remember her reading books and she just gathered to herself information about parenting, because she wanted to be the best possible parent, mother in this situation, as could be the case. I have been blessed throughout my life to have had wonderful mentors with regards to men who raised their family well. I'll be honest with you, some of the men were failures. But the advice that they gave me was, don't be like me. I've had many a preacher pull me aside and say, Sonny boy, he said, you need to be careful. You're raising your family and you're running all across the country doing this evangelistic work. You need to be careful, because many an evangelist has lost his children to the world because he paid too much attention to other folks' needs. I heard that message. I pegged that message on my priority list. And so you know what we did? We decided early on we're going to homeschool, because if I'm going, they're going with me. I'm not going to leave my family behind. I'm not going to allow somebody else to raise my boys. And so I made that decision early, but it was because I sought advice, in this case, from some folks who had failed and said, don't be like me. But I also saw individuals who succeeded, and I asked them, how do you do that? And I have been blessed with both of my boys to this point. My first son's in full-time ministry. Fully expect my second son will be in full-time ministry one day, not too far. He's a wonderful little preacher right now. And so I've been blessed, not because I'm such a great guy, but because I just had enough common sense to listen to folks who had done it right and apply the information that they had done. I'm not a great parent. I'm not a brilliant individual. Those of you know me very well, you know that that's not the case. But I'll tell you what, it doesn't take a rocket scientist or too great a level of understanding about parenting to recognize somebody has done it right before me. I wonder who they are. And start researching what they did right. That's easy stuff. The problem is, we are too enamored by those who are popular, have money, have materialistic success, whatever it may be, thinking that that's got to be the key. And in the process, you look at it. Many of them have lost their children to the world. Be careful who you select with regards to giving you advice. Okay, you got all that? I've got to move because I went long there, didn't I? I'm sorry. Okay. I got to take that off because the next thing you're going to see is going to fill up that screen, and it's going to look funny if I've got writing all over it. All right, what do we do next? Oh, question period. All right, teachers, take out your cameras and your phones and all that. And do we even use cameras anymore? I guess we do in our phones. But get a shot of that, because I don't really have time. I'm watching. I'm almost out of time as it is. But here are 6 questions that you can use with regards to the lesson. Where does Proverbs fit on the timeline? Who wrote it? Those kind of things. And the 2-word, there's 3 of them. 2-word opposite combinations. What were they? Got it? All right, let's move on. Prayer requests. Got, I think, 2 new ones to add to the list today. So please pay attention and be willing to pray for these folks. This is not a new one. We mentioned it last week, but hey, folks, it's Mother's Day. And whether or not you had a good mother or your mother's still alive, etc., it doesn't mean that you can't celebrate Mother's Day. There is a woman in your life who has been a phenomenal influence in building your character. Find that woman, praise that woman, thank God for that woman. Look at other women in the congregation, in your community, who are doing good in lifting children up and having that nurturing effect on others. They may never have had children themselves, but they have such a mothering effect. Thank God for mothers. Good friend of mine, Doug Broyles, we've been praying for him. I'm told that he's not doing well at all. And I love this guy with all of my heart. Here's one of those mentors. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe Brother Doug is one of those who has at times sat me down and well, I know that's the case, and has said to me, Sonny, look, you need to be careful here, you need to be careful there, da-da-da-da. I love this guy so much. His sweet wife, Miss Joyce. Please pray for Doug as he struggles with cancer. Another good friend of mine in Louisiana, Carl. ate at their table on several occasions, and I'm told that hospice has been called in for him as well. And pray for his sweet wife and his family as they're dealing with those difficult situations right now. Big MAP summer, 20th. I think we've told you that before. The 20th summer of training teenagers to look at America as a mission field. Cindy Gabriel and a bunch of us spent all day yesterday over at the MAP property trying to spruce it up. Painting's going on. New cabinets are being installed. There's a new shower that's being put in so that we can host a lot of folks during the adult week. And there's just a lot of work that's going on over there. Please be praying for MAP. We are in desperate need of a lawnmower. Ours has gone up. We're having all kinds of trouble with it, and we need a lawnmower bad. And I'm trying to raise funds for that on my own personal Facebook page. In fact, if you'll pedal down on the Facebook page, you'll find that. And I'd love it if you contribute towards that need, because my dad will be 80 years old this coming summer, and he's still able to get on the lawnmower, but not if it doesn't work. And when it dies in the middle of the field way out there, it's really hard for him to walk all the way back to the house. We need a new lawnmower. I think I've made enough speech about that. Clara from Indiana. I haven't had a report on this in a while, but I want to keep her up there because she's dealing with colon cancer, and her parents, I know them very well and love them. Let's remember Clara. Just got information this morning about a very dear friend of mine, Todd, who's also in Louisiana, has some disturbing test results that have come back, and they're concerned about that. And I love this guy. Please remember Todd, and I know that he and his family are, they're kind of in that stage of, oh my, what's going to happen and what do the results really mean and all that kind of thing. So remember Todd. And then lastly, I know I've had these two ladies on the prayer list for several months, but love them both very much, and they continue to struggle through the issues with regards to breast cancer. Tina and Linda, please remember them in your prayers. Last thing I'll say before slipping over there to switch into sermon mode is this. Again, if you've got prayer requests that you'd like to have, please send them to me. Again, we only do first names and state, and then a brief word or two as to what the condition is. So it's not really intrusive into privacy and that kind of thing, but I've got folks watching me all over the country, and the effectual fervent prayer of a righteous man availeth much. What if you get a bunch of folks all across the country praying? Things can happen. So be praying about this. I'm going to slip over here, and I'm going to change into sermon mode. But be praying about these, please. Good morning, folks. Welcome to Lord's Day Live. It's Mother's Day. So I hope that you're going to be able to celebrate Mother's Day and enjoy the day. The lesson time is going to be about mothers, and it's going to be a unique lesson. I'm going to title. Well, I'll show you the title in a moment. Let me just start off by reading this. I found this in my illustration book. I thought it was excellent. It's entitled "Motherhood." Blessed is the mother who can hold on to her children while letting them go. Wow, that's a big one. Blessed is the mother who puts a tranquil home ahead of an immaculate house. I always appreciated my mom. We actually were able to live in our home. It wasn't dirty, but we were able to live in our home. Blessed is the mother who knows a kind act will be remembered longer than an easy word. Yeah. Blessed is the mother who really believes that prayer changes things. Oh, wow. That's a big one, isn't it? How many mothers have you known? Maybe you've had maternal influences in your life where, you knew that the only way you survived is because there was somebody praying for you. Blessed is the mother whose faith in the future sweetens the present. Yeah. Women who have a positive outlook on what's to come, especially heaven, and are anxious about what is to come. Oh, boy, they just change the present radically, don't they? Blessed is the mother whose Bible never needs dusting. I own my grandmother's Bible. I treasure it. It's probably the one thing, if the house was burning down other than my family, it's probably the one thing I would want to make sure got out the house. Because she's got notes in it, she's got things in it, little scraps of paper that she's put in it from Bible study, etc. Believe me, it never gathered dust. Blessed is the mother whose sense of humor is alive and well. Yeah. Because, when you think about it, is there anybody in the way God has designed culture, is there anybody who's designed to wear more hats than a mom? I mean, think about all that she has to put up with, all that she has to do, all the things that she has to accomplish. That's why it's so important for us to establish roles within the home so that she has one less thing to worry about. I mean, just being a nurturer goes in a gazillion directions. But then when you add to that, she's got to be a provider as well, and on and on. Boy, you really complicate the situation. But blessed is the mother who is able to juggle 1,000 things at once. And boy, women are amazing in that respect, are they not? All right, here's where we're going today. Mary's Mother's Day. Mary's Mother's Day. I love this picture of I think it's from a movie or something, but beautiful Mary. And that's supposed to be Jesus there. And blessed is the woman who brought about the Savior through the Immaculate Conception with God. Think about that. Ooh, wow. The great responsibility of her three men. It's kind of an odd twist on things, but Mother's Day sermons, not that they shouldn't be preached, but I think we sometimes wear out the Mother's Day sermons. And I bet there's 1,000 churches across the nation that are going to be preaching out of Proverbs 31 this morning. Not that that's a bad thing, but sometimes I like to look at it from a different direction. And so I got to thinking to myself, this would be about as radical a different direction as you can go. Let's look at it from the perspective of a man. Mary's Mother's Day. The three great responsibilities, I could say that, but I'm specifically talking about the great responsibilities of her three men. Three different men in her life. Give you a hint. All three of them, their names start with J. Okay? Alright, here's our first one. First thing that I want you to notice is Matthew chapter 1, verses 18 and following. Hope that you can see that. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to pull this in here and push that over there, because if I do that, you'll be able to see that better. Probably won't be able to see me, but that's okay. That's a little better, isn't it? You don't need to see that other whiteboard now because we already got through Bible class. The print's a little bit small. I want you to see everything on here. This is Joseph, and the first thing that I'm going to suggest to you that we need to do as men with regards to Mother's Day is understand what the first man in her life did, and that was he protected her dignity. Two really interesting passages. First of all, the 18th to the 20th, and then the 24th to the 25th of Matthew chapter 1. This is how the birth of Jesus the Messiah came about. His mother Mary was pledged to be married to Joseph, but before they came together, that means before they had never been intimate. Okay? So before they came together, she, that is Mary, was found to be pregnant through the Holy Spirit. Now he doesn't know that. Joseph doesn't know that at the moment. But all of a sudden, this woman who he wants to marry, she's pregnant. Now that puts a man in a really bad position, especially back in the day. Watch what happens. Because Joseph, her husband, was faithful to the law, he was a law-abiding citizen, more than just the secular law. He was abiding by the Mosaic law. And so he is a husband who's faithful to the law, and yet did not want to expose her to public disgrace. He knew what the law said with regards to a woman who was pregnant outside of wedlock. He understood what needed to happen there, but he didn't want to subject her to public disgrace. And so instead of doing that, he had in mind to divorce her quietly. Quietly. Now, again, you can go on with the description as to why didn't he do there are other options, why didn't he, and maybe in some degree there could have been. But I think that the big point here with regards to Mary is this first man in her life comes into a scenario that's just like mind-blowing. What am I supposed to do with this? In some ways, it's the worst nightmare possible, both for Joseph and for Mary. All of a sudden, she's pregnant, but she has never had relationships with a man. But everybody's going to assume she's had relationships with a man. I mean, how else do you get pregnant? It's the one moment in history that is unlike any other moment in history. Do you know of any other woman that experienced a conception because of God? It's a God-Mary scenario. This is really an odd moment, and Joseph has to deal with that. I can think of a lot of things that I would have done. Sometimes I've got a temper. I can only imagine what my temper might have led me to with regards to this scenario. But notice what Joseph is willing to do. I just find this to be so huge. In order to guard her dignity, Joseph, being a man faithful to the law, he didn't want to expose her to, why not? Why wouldn't you want to expose her to public disgrace? I mean, here she is, the woman who you're going to marry, and find she's pregnant? Because Joseph had a character. And it was a character, notice this, he was faithful to the law. His first priority was to God. And one of the things he knew was that God would want him to be a caring man. And so instead of exposing her to public disgrace, he was just going to divorce her quietly. But then you go on to the next part of the passage, because this is where it gets crazy good. It says that, but after he had considered this, an angel of the Lord appeared to him. Too much stuff to put on there, so I skipped, So we're skipping on down to verse 24 then, okay? So an angel appears to Joseph and basically explains, here's what happened. Now that had to be some kind of a weird moment for him as well. Now, the angel shows up and he says, now here, let me just tell you what's happening here. I realize you're concerned. You're this woman who you want to marry. I realize she's pregnant, but you just don't have the whole story. The reason she's pregnant is because God impregnated her. You don't think that would have caused Joseph to shake his head and say, what? First time in history, last time in history, that we have any record of God impregnating a woman. But here it is. And so Joseph is in that, what in the world's going on? But watch what happens. When Joseph woke up, so evidently the angel's appearing to him in a dream, he did what the angel of the Lord had commanded. You need to connect this. Notice this. He did what the Lord, and he's faithful to the law. Do you see that connection? That's crazy good. There have not been enough sermons written about Joseph. He must have been some kind of man. And I think that one of the reasons that he and Mary were destined to become married is because God didn't just choose Mary. He chose the perfect man, it seems to me, who would take care of this rather odd scenario. And Joseph was that guy. He's faithful to the law, and so he's going to do what the Lord commands, even if it means that's really odd. And how in the world am I going to explain this to my relatives, to the community? And remember, they didn't live in a massive, big metropolitan area where they could hide in the corners. And so it just put Joseph in a really, really odd spot. But he never neglected the priorities of doing what God wanted. He was faithful to law here, and he did immediately what the angel commanded him down here because that came from God. What did he do? The Lord had commanded him, and he took Mary home as his wife. And so, as weird as this is, yes, she's going to be my wife just like we had planned prior to this. But this is interesting too, I think. As far as dignity is concerned, he did not consummate their marriage until she gave birth to a son. And he gave him the name Jesus. Dignity. The dignity of all that was done with regards to Joseph. Now again, it's Mother's Day. We shouldn't be talking about men so much. And so the point here is not about Joseph as much as it is about you as a man. and what you should do for your mother, or even if as a woman, what you should do for your mother. Make sure that you guard her dignity, number one. All right, number two. Got to erase that because we're going to have a different passage that's going to come up here. Where's my thing? There it is. Number two. The second man in her life, again, starting with the letter J, the second man in her life, of course, is Jesus. And I got two passages here that I hope will build upon each other. And while you're doing that, kind of look at that cute little Jesus over there. Okay. Luke chapter 2, verse 51. Then he went down to Nazareth with them and was obedient to them, but his mother treasured all these things in her heart. You probably are familiar with this passage. This is what comes right on the heels of them going to Jerusalem and Jesus staying behind in the temple. They get halfway home. They got to turn around and go back. Joseph and Mary are a little upset. Jesus says to him, don't you know I needed to be about my Father's business? It says in the passage, they read back in the previous context, it says they don't really understand what in the world that even means. But here's the point with regards to Jesus, the second man in Mary's life. Notice the priority he places upon mom. And I want to emphasize something. Do you see this word here? And do you see this word here? When Jesus went home, he was obedient to them, not just Joseph. He was obedient to them. That includes mom, Mary. He's 12 at this point. He is at that age where adulthood is coming on fast, and at that age, he's still obedient to his mother. Why is that? Because he placed such a high priority on motherhood. He understood what Mary was supposed to be with regards to his life. So the second thing, with regards to the second man in her life, that I think is very important for us to make application to, is that we need to be people who place priority on mothers. But it only gets better when you come down to the John passage. All right, this happens when he's 12. Jesus is now about to really get after it as far as his ministry is concerned. And in John chapter 2, this is changing the water into a wine thing, okay? In John chapter 2, verses 2 through 5, on the third day a wedding took place in Cana of Galilee, in Galilee. Jesus' mother was there, Mary, okay? And Jesus and his disciples had also been invited to the wedding. So you got mom, you got Jesus, and you got his entourage of folks who he's training, his disciples, okay? When the wine was gone, Jesus' mother said to him, they have no more wine. Now, pause for a moment. Why tell Jesus? Sounds to me like Jesus is just a guest there. Why bring it to your son's attention? Continue reading. They have no more wine. Notice Jesus' response. Woman, why do you involve me? That was my question. Why do you involve me? And by the way, the word woman there is not in the original, I'm told. Did a little research on this yesterday. The word woman there is not derogatory at all. It's not like, woman? It's not that at all. And so he's saying to his mom, what does that have to do with me? Evidently it's not my party. Why? Don't moms sometimes do that to their sons? Sometimes moms require extra effort from their boy, their child, right? And I want to know, back up here, the priority. I want you to stay with it. This is the theme that we're having with regards to Jesus. Notice the priority he places on mom. Continue reading. They have no more wine. Woman, why do you involve me in this? Jesus replied. My hour is not yet come. It's not yet time for me to step out with regards to ministry in this realm. It doesn't seem. Moms, at times they require that we adjust our schedule. I've had to do this throughout my life, but I haven't done it nearly as much as I should have. I've had a wonderful, wonderful mother. But sometimes moms need for you and I to just adjust things because they're a priority, right? Watch the last sentence. Jesus replied, my hour is not yet come. His mother said to the servants, do whatever he tells you. What's that about? He just told her, my hour is not come yet. Mom, why are you even talking to me? Mary makes the conclusion immediately that her son's going to do what he has to do because she has asked him to do it. You know why? Because Jesus was all about putting a priority on mom. I find that to be a remarkable exchange between the two. Jesus just says, why are you asking me? My hour is not yet come. And it's like Mary doesn't even respond to that. She just turns to the servant and says, listen, he's going to do what I asked, so you get after it. Why is that? Because the second man in the life of Mary knew how to celebrate Mary's Mother's Day by making sure that she was a priority. And we've got to do the same thing. All right, number 3. All right, has anybody guessed at this point who the number 3J is? Good Bible students are way ahead of me, I suspect. All right, number 3, John. Yeah, John. And I recognize John's not the biological child of Mary. I get that. But you're familiar with these two passages, maybe not the second one. But first of all, notice, and our word, by the way, is eternity. So we've been coming through the three things there, dignity and priority and now eternity. We are called as men who interact with women who are very motherly in nature. We are called to guard their dignity, guard their priority, and guard their eternity. And watch how this plays out. In John chapter 19, near the cross of Jesus stood his mother, down to verse 26. When Jesus saw his mother there, and the disciple whom he loved standing nearby, he said to her, "Woman, here is your son," and to the disciple, "Here is your mother." From that time on, the disciple took her into his house, or into his home. From that time on, I want to talk about that in just a minute, from that time on. But let's go back and see it real quickly. Near the cross, there's Jesus. So Jesus is on the cross. Imagine, he's in horrible, horrible pain. They say that he probably had to pull himself up in order to just breathe. He probably, in many respects, Jesus probably drowned in his own fluids, is the way that he probably eventually succumbed to all of the conditions that were about him. But just imagine the horrible pain, and yet he sees mom, he has compassion on mom. From the cross, our Savior takes time for mom. Make sure mom is okay. Now, obviously, it's the biological child of Mary that is going to take care of her eternity with regards to saving her soul. I get that. But Jesus also recognized that it wasn't too many days following this that he was going to ascend back to the Father, and his mother is going to need somebody to care for her, not just physically, I think, but also spiritually. And he looks down and he sees John. He sees the disciple whom he loves. And I think, in context, he's thinking to himself, if I've got to place my mother in the care of somebody with regards to her eternity, it's going to be John. Now that raises a few questions, because you might recall Jesus had brothers. And one of his brothers, at least, is going to write a book in our Bible, James. Why doesn't he place his mother into the care of his of his brothers from his own home? Why doesn't he do that? Because evidently he looks down and he sees John, and John is more trustworthy perhaps at this point. You might recall there was a time when his mother and his brothers didn't even believe in him. In fact, they went down there to try to bring him home because they thought he'd gone nuts. They thought he was crazy. We're going to see that changes. But at this particular moment, it says that Jesus cares for his mother's eternity so much that he makes sure that he places her in the charge of his best friend, John. From that time on, his disciple took her into his home. From that time on. What period of time is that? It doesn't tell us the ending there. In fact, it seems to indicate that from that time on, Mary was under the care, the supervision, the provisions of John. And if you do, you think, I don't know how old Mary was when she gave birth to Jesus, but she probably at this particular point wasn't much over 50. So she's got some life left in her. John's going to have to take care of that, which kind of leads us into the next passage. As you pedal forward, now remember there's a lot that happens between here and here. This is Jesus' ascension. But we've got the death, the burial, the resurrection. He's going to stay on the earth for 40 days, be seen by all kinds of individuals, etc. And then eventually they're going to go to the top of the mountain, and he's going to ascend back to the Father. And it says that after that ascension takes place, Acts chapter 1, then the apostles returned to Jerusalem. When they arrived, they went upstairs to the room where they were staying. Those present were Peter, John, James, ... A bunch of other folks are listed there. They all joined together constantly in prayer along with the women and Mary, the mother of Jesus, and with his brothers. Evidently, by this particular point, at least several, at least two, I should say, brothers are now believers. And we notice that in the upper room, we've got Mary, the mother of Jesus, is present for this prayer session. Remember what Jesus says, go wait. So they're going to wait there for 10 days, it seems, until the Holy Spirit comes on the day of Pentecost, etc. all indications are that Mary, the mother of Jesus, was a, what do you call those members? The establishing member of the Lord's church. She was one of the originals. You know, we often do that. Well, probably today in your Mother's Day services, some of you might have see this happening. Where, you know, who's the oldest mother in the room? Who's been here in this congregation the longest? Kind of thing. Mary would have been one of the earliest. She would have been one of the first on the day of Pentecost. Evidently, there's Mary. My point is this. John, according to the words of Jesus, was in charge of Mary from that time on. And it seems that John did a good job, because even at the opening day of the church, the day of Pentecost, we've got Mary, it seems, that is present. At least she's here for these days right up to the Pentecost, and I don't think there's any reason to assume that she wasn't at Pentecost. I also, in my research, this seems to be the last mention we have of Mary, the mother of Jesus. There are other Marys mentioned, but this seems to be the last in the chronological timeline that we have of Mary, who was there. Isn't that crazy good? Who was there praying. So she doesn't give up on her son. She doesn't back away from the priorities that her son placed. She very likely endured a great deal of persecution, being the mother of the son, who had a name that was forbidden to be even preached about in the city because of the upper echelons of Judaism, etc. Think about all the pressures that she had. But John, bless his heart, the third J in her life, John guarded her eternity. Oops, I should have taken all that stuff off. That was supposed to be rather climactic, but with all my stuff on there, it didn't happen, did it? So there you go, as I conclude this thing. Mary's men guarded her dignity. They guarded her priority as being a priority. And they guarded her eternity. And of course, the big question then is, have you done the same for your mother? Are you doing the same for other women around about you, guarding their dignity, their priority, and their eternity? Happy Mother's Day. I pray that it's a blessing. If you'll pedal backwards in my feed on Facebook, you'll notice that I wrote a poem, and it's kind of a video poem, and you can see various pictures of pretty moms and hugging their children, that kind of a thing. And it's an important poem to me. I wrote it for my mom, but it might be a good way to conclude your time with me this morning if you pedal backwards and listen to that. It's just a short little poem, but I think that your heart will be made better if you listen to it. I thank you for joining me this beautiful Sunday morning, Mom's Day. Be sure to praise God and thank God for creating moms. Sonny Childs, until next time, be there. Matthew 16:26.